Well, the Kings season is over. And on one hand, it's horrible. Sitting in that arena, down 23 at halftime, watching the nothingness of that second half, an utter disappointment. And I was extremely upset at that time. And I mean, I still am. That game was horrible. Watching that game, there was no place that I wanted to be less in that moment than in Golden One Center as the Kings were getting blown out in a win or go home game against a team that had a GM that the entire fan base wants to do some very not nice things to. Against a team that traded Luka Doncic and you're getting blown out. Kyrie Irving blew out his knee. How are you getting blown out by that team? It was a pretty disgraceful performance. And so, yeah, that is disappointing. On the other hand, I'm kind of glad it's over. This was just a horrible, horrible season. Just 2 years ago, we had the clutch player of the year, we had the coach of the year, we had the executive of the year. And now every single one of those guys is gone. Fox is gone. Mike Brown is gone. Monte McNair, just, 30 minutes after the game, maybe even less, it was announced that he was let go. Or that they, mutually agreed to part ways. Yeah, I mean, sure. I'm sure Monte McNair didn't want to be here anymore. I wouldn't if I were him. I have been such a Sabonis defender. I have defended Sabonis with my life at times, but I can't do that tonight. I mean, I can't do it with him, and with LaVine, I tried so hard to give it a shot. You traded De'Aaron Fox for LaVine. That's not a good thing, but I tried to give it a shot. But the performances from those two guys in a win or go home game at home to a team that you're favored against, to a team that you should just beat, and they both didn't show up. Or maybe it would have been better if they didn't show up. It might have been better if they didn't show up. I mean, they were completely negatives. They were two of the worst players on the court. And those are your two highest paid players. I still think that Sabonis is a great player, and I think in the right situation, he can still be a winning player. I don't buy into he's not a winning player or whatever. But this game was horrendous, and this just entire Kings roster doesn't make any sense. And so we get to watch Sabonis and LaVine absolutely flounder while DeMar, does okay. He was fine, he scored 33 points. Good for him. He got his 33 in while no defense was being played. And now it's just time. It's time for it all to be over. All right, it's time for a full reset. Monte McNair is out. We don't have a front office. We don't have a head coach. I would love nothing more than for a full reset. If your name isn't Keegan Murray, Keon Ellis, or Devin Carter, you can go. Do I think that's going to happen? I have no idea. I have no idea because while the front office may have been cleaned out, while the organization for the most part may have, cleaned house, we all know there's one guy at the top still. And it all can be traced back to him. And so as long as he's there, it's hard to have much faith in them making the right decision. But I just really hope they don't subject us to another year of watching this team. Watching a team that is just so incredibly middle of the pack in all the worst ways. A team that doesn't play defense, a core that doesn't play defense. I still believe that Sabonis, in the right situation, can be a super impactful player and a super winning player. This is not that situation. LaVine, probably the same. DeRozan, the same. Like any of those guys individually can go to different teams and be impactful players. And you can add Malik Monk to this as well. But man, do those four just not fit together at all. Two of them on the same team might work. Three of them even if you're bringing one off the bench like Malik Monk. But the four certainly don't work together, and the three in Sabonis, DeRozan, and LaVine certainly do not work together. And like I said, I tried to give LaVine a chance. I really did, but it's hard not to just come back to you traded the guy, the franchise player. The guy you drafted 5th overall in 2017, the guy who wanted to be here, the guy who promised to bring the team back to the playoffs, and you messed everything up so badly because you refused to build the proper team around him that he got traded for Zach LaVine, who in a win or go home game just looked completely lost. Horrendous defensive performance from Zach LaVine. Wasn't really even good offensively either. And they let the Mavs just come in and bully them. And especially in that second quarter. I mean, if you're just going by who won the quarters, the Kings won this game 3-1. But when you lose the second quarter 44-19, 44-19. It was just over at that point because in the second half, they didn't play enough defense to ever really get back into it. And it's just really sad to see what this team has become. Looking back a couple of years, even last year, looking back at how fun those teams were, looking back at how bright the future was, and then looking at the team at this point and saying, how did it get screwed up this badly? And honestly, I feel bad for the players. I don't blame any single one of the players. They may have not given a good effort in this game and in this specific game. Like Sabonis deserves all the criticism that's coming to him. LaVine the same. They deserve all the criticism for this one specific game. But looking at it from a broader point of view, I just feel bad for the players, for DeRozan, who was promised something completely different when he came here, and for any of the other players that were traded into this train wreck. And I wish it was as simple as firing Monte McNair. That would fix everything, or at least give us a reset. But it's not. I really wish that we could count on a reset coming to look forward to. A new young generation of players to come in and give us some hope. And it could happen. It could happen. I really hope it does. But you don't have your first round pick this year. Although, I think technically there is a way to get it if both the lower seeds win in the next 2 play-in games, plus you win a coin toss. I think technically that's still a way we could keep our pick, but extremely unlikely. You don't have your pick. You went from having some really nice contracts and very clean books to not so great of contracts. And you just hear all these rumors about, Vlade is going to come back into the front office now. And, it's probably somehow going to include Vivek's daughter or something. And Jeremy Lamb, it's just, I'm just so done with all that. Why can't this team just hire a competent general manager, get a competent front office in, and get out of the way? Wouldn't that be so nice? And if I thought that could happen, then I could stand a few years, quite a lot of years actually, of being bad. If there is a chance that you see on the horizon a team that can actually compete. And that's what I thought we were getting with this team, right? I thought 2 years ago that things were finally changing, that this team was finally gaining some accountability. They had a head coach in Mike Brown that preached accountability constantly. They had a GM in Monte McNair at the time who was making some very nice moves. And so it just had finally seemed like things had changed. But now how am I supposed to believe that things have changed? And so now, even if the Kings do reset and they get the number 1 pick, I mean, say this year they win the lottery, they get Cooper Flag, they get these young guys, they get young talent. How are we now supposed to believe that this organization is going to then build around them properly and not screw it up? Like, now it's hard to believe that because you finally did have a good situation and you screwed it up so badly. I guess we can go through this game. It's not a very fun thing that we have to do, but here we are. The main quarter that mattered was the second quarter. Everything else didn't really even matter. The game was lost in the second quarter. But we can still start in the first quarter. The keys for the Kings was going to be pushing the pace, was going to be keeping the Mavericks out of the paint, keeping all the size that the Mavericks have outside of the paint. And so in the first quarter, I would say they accomplished one of those goals, which was pushing the pace, but didn't accomplish the other, which was keeping the Mavericks out of the paint. Offensively, of Keegan hitting an early 3, and when he hit that first 3, I was like, oh, here we go again. We're getting another play-in Keegan Murray performance. And then the Kings were pushing the pace. They were getting to the rim. They were struggling to finish around the size that the Mavericks had, but that's exactly why you have to get out in transition. To try to attack before that size of the Mavericks is in the paint. But when that Maverick size was at the rim and ready to contest, they had a nice kick out to Keon Ellis for 3, and he missed it, but it was an open 3. Offense in the half court was much more of a struggle. LaVine did get an early 3, but after his first 3, the Mavericks tightened up, didn't give him as much space coming around screens. And so the half-court offense very much was a struggle. Just trying to finish at the rim against this Mavericks defense. Lively, Anthony Davis, Daniel Gafford were posing a lot of problems at the rim. And that led to a lot of hesitation for the Kings at the rim, especially from Sabonis, who just looked super hesitant attacking inside. And so they had to rely on 3-point shooting early on. And luckily the threes were going down. LaVine hit a 3, Lyles hit a 3. Defensively, the Mavericks were getting inside right away. LaVine was guarding Klay Thompson, which I thought was interesting. That's not the matchup I thought we were going to go with. I thought we were going to go with Keon Ellis on Klay Thompson, but we went with Zach LaVine, and immediately Klay Thompson gets downhill, gets into the paint, and finds Derek Lively inside for an easy bucket. The Kings started Keegan Murray on Anthony Davis, and the Mavericks were trying to get Anthony Davis to go at Domantas Sabonis. I'm not sure why. That felt like a very odd decision from the Mavericks, but that's what they were doing. And Sabonis, of course, was just holding his ground and forcing Anthony Davis into long mid-rangers, into jumpers. And Anthony Davis couldn't find anything early on, really. He started 2 for 9. Sabonis was just staying in front, forcing tough shots. The problems for the Kings defense really came when somebody else was guarding Anthony Davis, when Keegan Murray was guarding AD, when Lyles was guarding AD, and AD would put them in the post. And so the Kings wanted to start Sabonis off of AD so that Sabonis could be the help defender. But what they were doing is they were sending Sabonis to help on the baseline. And so that meant Anthony Davis would be forced middle, but he had his eyes up to the middle of the court. That means he could see the entire court, and he was picking out passes to the open Mavericks pretty easily. The rotations were bad. It led to a couple of Najee Marshall corner threes, or actually one of them was a long 2. But the corners were the problems. It was Najee Marshall catching in the corners and hitting shots. It was PJ Washington catching the ball in the corners and then attacking closeouts. PJ Washington had a great start. He was driving by Trey Lyles a lot. And he was able to get inside and really be a playmaker from there. Like, he had his fair share of scores, but his passing was really what impressed me. The rotations were not good. The closeouts weren't good, letting the Mavericks into the paint, forcing the help defender to step up, and then nobody was helping the helper, and they were getting a lot of easy looks from the dunker spot. There was one crazy foul call. Keon Ellis called for just an insane foul call with how much they were letting go, just putting his hand on AD's hip. That was an insane foul call. Anthony Davis definitely got the benefit of the whistle in this one, because he got away with 3 fouls on the other end of just jumping practically onto guys' backs, and definitely got some ghost calls there. But Keon Ellis got that foul call. He got into foul trouble, but Devin Carter came in and he played pretty well. But the one place where the Mavericks were really exploiting him is, he was trying to press full court like he always does, and he was pressing up on Dante Exum. And that's great. Press full court. Good on you. But what we've seen recently from him is he's pressing full court, and he's giving the other team easy looks the other way, because he's not able to stay in front of his man. And so really what the Mavericks were doing, he was trying to press Dante Exum full court, and the Mavericks were just giving Exum one screen. And usually if you're pressing full court, you see Keon do this all the time, you just go under that screen. It relieves the pressure for the ball handler. But if you just take an angle that will cut the ball handler off before he gets anywhere close to even the half court line, then you'll be fine. He's not going to get to the rim. But Devin Carter was trying to go over these screens at like 3/4 court. And so Dante Exum was then driving into the middle of the paint and getting either easy finishes or pulling rotations from there. And so Devin Carter I like the aggressiveness, but he needed to know when to pull off a little bit. So the Mavs had a little bit of an advantage until Valanciunas came in, stopped Anthony Davis twice at the rim. Kings pushed the other way. Devin Carter in the corner, confident, pulls up 4-3, and that put the Kings up 2. That was the high point of the game. That moment was awesome. When Devin Carter hit that 3, crowd was going insane. Defense to offense, transition play, defending the paint, like that is everything we wanted. Then after the Mavericks called timeout, they were trying to inbound, and Devin Carter knocks the ball away, and he probably got fouled. Probably should have been a turnover. Then Devin did drive and draw a foul. Keegan drove inside. Valanciunas had a nice seal. He had a tough finish. For the Mavericks, it was Brandon Williams that came in, knocked down a 3. And I didn't really think Brandon Williams was going to get the minutes over Spencer Dinwiddie. That was a surprise to me. Good on Jason Kidd for that one, because that worked really well. I mean, I'm definitely not really a fan of Spencer Dinwiddie's game. So putting in Brandon Williams, that's a great move. He came in, knocked down a three, but the Kings were up 2 at the end of the first quarter. And it felt like they could have played so much better. So after the first quarter, I'm thinking, okay, we're up, but we're not even playing our best basketball. The 3-point shooting has kind of kept us in it. The pace was nice, but too much hesitation on some shots. Sabonis has to be more aggressive. LaVine has to be more aggressive. The paint defense has to be better. The rotations have to be better. And you're still up 2 points. So I'm like, we're good. We're good, right? Yeah, no, completely wrong. I didn't realize how much worse it could actually get. And the sad part was it had nothing to do with Anthony Davis. So no Kyrie Irving, no Anthony Davis really doing all that much offensively until later in the second quarter. It was Klay Thompson who came out on fire. And I mean, I kind of expected Klay to, not go 0 for like he did last time. But he gets 2 pretty tough threes against LaVine. One of them, it was like a lucky bounce in. Then we switched Keon onto him. And Keon did a much worse job than LaVine, honestly, guarding him. And he got 2 pretty open threes against Keon. Brandon Williams hit 2 straight threes to start the second quarter. PJ Washington was driving inside, attacking Trey Lyles. And then the offense for the Kings looked horrendous. Sabonis and LaVine were not on the same page at all. And that's something that we have seen a lot, but I had hope coming into the final parts of the season that it was getting better, because it did seem like it was getting a little bit better. But in this game, it didn't look like they had played together at all. Lyles and Sabonis were passing up shots at the rim. DeMar, he did it a lot where he went into a shot and then he passed out of it. The half-court offense completely stalled. They couldn't get any stops. They couldn't force any turnovers. They couldn't get out in transition and get easy buckets. And instead, the Mavericks were doing that exact thing. PJ Washington, Dante Exum were bullying their way inside, attacking in transition. LaVine was turning the ball over. And one of the things they said on the broadcast was they listened in to Doug Christie in the huddle, and Doug Christie said, the Mavs are playing the game we want to play, forcing turnovers, scoring in transition, playing fast. And that's exactly right. The Mavs were playing the game that we wanted to play. The Mavericks, a team that just doesn't really have ball handling, which I assume is why we put Keon and Najee Marshall to even try to limit the little bit of ball handling that Najee Marshall can do. But it didn't matter. We couldn't force turnovers. The defense was not there at all. There was no disruptiveness. And that's one of the faults of this Kings team. A team that wants to play super fast, but doesn't have the defensive players to really do it. Like, yes, sometimes Keon can make a play, but he was having a rough first half. Klay Thompson used his gravity from the three-point land to cut, pump fake inside. Keon Ellis fouls him. Keon comes out of the game. Devin Carter goes in to guard Klay Thompson. Devin Carter definitely did the best job of anyone guarding Klay Thompson, but Klay went to set a screen. And of course, Devin Carter's just sticking with him, right? Klay has made 4 threes this quarter. Do not leave him. Good job, Devin Carter. And LaVine just wants to switch it. And I don't know what could have gone through his head where he thought that they were going to switch that. Allows an easy bucket. LaVine in that second quarter played some horrendous defense. I don't really blame him for the 2 Klay Thompson threes that were hit over him. Those were pretty tough shots. But the rest of the quarter, his defense was just horrendous. And not only was his defense horrendous, he was turning the ball over. Kings weren't playing any transition defense at the rim. We're letting the Mavericks just walk inside for easy layups. The Mavs couldn't miss. And like I said, Anthony Davis started this game 2 for 9. And he only got his 3rd field goal when the Mavericks just threw over the top to him over Keegan Murray. And so then the Kings panic, go to Valanciunas and Sabonis, which it's like, yeah, that's kind of what I thought would happen if we went down. That's the panic move. And, Valanciunas, he gets a block, but then Gafford still gets an offensive rebound over him. You put in double bigs and you still allow this offensive rebound, and you're not able to push the other way. Anthony Davis then heated up from there, started to knock down threes. Couple of miscommunications on some screens. Anthony Davis pick and pop. DeMar passed the ball out of bounds, trying to pass out of a shot. Sabonis set a moving screen. It just completely went downhill. And the Kings were down 23 at halftime. 44-19. That's an insane quarter. And I remember I said at halftime, I said, it's probably time for Doug McDermott. And that didn't come until later, until I think the fourth quarter. But eventually Doug McDermott time came. This season for the Kings, I've always judged every deficit by how many threes Doug McDermott needs to come in and make to make up this deficit. And so at halftime, I was like, okay, 8 Doug McDermott threes away. But the problem with that is, Doug McDermott could come in and make those 8 threes, but it wouldn't have mattered because the Kings didn't get stops. At the beginning of that third quarter, Anthony Davis just comes around a screen, another miscommunication. The amount of miscommunications with the way the Kings were trying to defend screens was crazy. And Sabonis has to step up, of course, and Anthony Davis just lobs it up to Derek Lively. Sabonis, awful game from him. His hands were horrible. He was losing balls left and right. Couldn't catch a pass. And when he did, he had a moment where he had Derek Lively inside. One-on-one. The floor completely spaced out. No one's coming. And he has deep position on Lively. And he just passes it back out. He was so passive. He was so scared to go up at the rim. He had so many opportunities to attack, and he just didn't. And the Kings tried to cut into the lead. They went on a 10-0 run at one point. They cut it to 16. LaVine got going a little bit. DeMar scored a little bit. There were some moments. Sabonis had a putback. DeMar got a steal and got a layup on the other end. Then Sabonis got a steal. Devin Carter got a layup on the other end. But then the Kings got into foul trouble. They were fouling, mainly Anthony Davis at the start, fouling him over and over and over again. And then at the end of the quarter, he was just fouling anyone. And so every time that the Kings tried to make a little bit of a run, when they got their offense going a little bit, they scored 33 points in that third quarter. The offense was good. They were knocking down shots. Their guys got going. But it just didn't matter. Because instead of moving their feet defensively, instead of rotating, leading with the chest and being physical, they were just reaching in and picking up cheap fouls, sending the Mavericks to the line. And so the Kings, they could have made a run. They absolutely could have if they were able to get some stops and stop fouling. Because the offense did finally get going. But that's the thing. This team is so heavily focused offensively that if you have a 19-point quarter, and if you go into a 23-point deficit, it's so hard to come back because they just can't get enough stops. How many times have we seen this team start first quarters on fire and everything feels amazing? And then you look down at the scoreboard and you're like, we're only up by 4? Zach LaVine will be on fire. DeMar is hitting everything. Sabonis has a hot start. And then it's like, oh, we're only up 4? And then the Kings cool off and the other team just takes the lead. And it's like, what was that all for? It's very easy to see that when it's in the first quarter and when the Kings start hot. But then when you see it in a situation like this, where the Kings didn't start hot and they got into a big hole, then watching them try to climb out of that hole is the exact same thing. They get hot offensively, they're finally scoring, but it's like you can't get enough stops, so you're not actually cutting into this deficit. And from there, the fourth quarter was a whole bunch of nothing. Doug McDermott minutes, you know how it is. He came in and got that first shot attempt, and the build up for the crowd when he shot that, like, it didn't matter that the Kings were down and that vibes were so down. The crowd was ready to explode if Doug McDermott hit that shot. The Kings had a bunch of three-pointers go down and out in that fourth quarter from Doug, from Keegan, but obviously, there wasn't much of a chance in that fourth quarter. And you know what I hated most about not just this game, but really this entire season, going back to even the first game when it wasn't this roster, when it was the previous roster, but mainly this roster, is how much when things are going poorly, especially defensively, and when the team seems like they're lacking the necessary energy, especially in a play-in game, like your season's going to end and you don't have the right energy to be able to play defense out there. For some reason, we lean more into non-defensive units when that happens, right? It's Keon Ellis that only plays 18 minutes. It's Trey Lyles that only plays 18 minutes. It's even Jonas Valanciunas who only plays 10 minutes. And instead, we lean into playing Zach LaVine 44 minutes. We lean into DeMar playing 43 minutes. And it's like, to some extent, I understand the thought process. Like, you need your offensive guys to get going. You're living and dying by the guys that you're paying the big bucks to get you back in the game offensively. But I think just throughout this season, I've been frustrated in the moments where it feels like that energy isn't there. And our answer is then to take Keon Ellis out of the game or, take Devin Carter out of the game. And that's the problem with building a team where your highest paid players are so one-dimensionally offensive? Is that when things are going poorly and you want to lean into someone? Well, now you're leaning into your highest paid players, you're leaning into your stars, but none of them can solve the issues that you already have. None of them can solve the issues that need to be solved in a game like this. Going through the box score, Sabonis, 5 for 13 from the field. Only 11 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, 5 turnovers. He didn't show up. LaVine went 8 for 19 in 44 minutes. Had 20 points and 9 assists. Also 5 turnovers, played some awful defense. DeMar played 43 minutes and had 33 points. Definitely played the best of the big three, but still, it wasn't like a great night from DeRozan or anything. Keegan, he had 9.6 rebounds. Had 2 massive chase down blocks on Anthony Davis, which was fun, even though the game was over at that point. There were a few times he tried to attack, and one time he did get a nice finish to go. But then there were other times where he would lose the ball, or he tried to go at Anthony Davis in transition, and it just wasn't there for him. And so what I'm hoping now is the Kings blow it up, and next season you get Keegan Murray, #1 scorer. Let's go. Figure it out. And I don't think in his career he is like a top scorer on a team, but I think it'd be good for him to have the experience of trying to figure that out. Keon went 3 for 4 from the field for 9 points. Only played 18 minutes though. Struggled to guard Klay Thompson. Struggled to stay out of foul trouble. And then off the bench, you had Devin Carter coming in, playing 22 minutes, 10 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal. And so he was definitely the bright spot of the game. And it kind of reminded me of the playoff series against the Warriors, where I come into the series and you have a rookie starting in Keegan Murray. And so I'm thinking, okay, I don't know how a rookie is going to do in this type of playoff series, right? There are probably going to be ups and downs. At times he might get played off the court. I feel like that's to be expected. He needs the vets to kind of step up and carry him. Instead, what do you get? You get the veterans playing horribly in Kevin Huerter and Harrison Barnes, and Keegan has to be the guy to step up. That's what this game felt like. The veterans letting us down, and Devin Carter, the rookie, who you shouldn't have to rely on, has to be the one to step up. And good for him that he stepped up and played those minutes and defended well, but that's just a massive indictment on the vets of this team. Lyles played 18 minutes, 5.6 rebounds. Valanciunas only played 10 minutes. I thought he would play more. I would have played him more. Had 4 points and only 1 board. And then Doug McDermott came in, took a couple of threes, missed them both. Kings had 18 turnovers on the game. Mavs had 9. Mavericks shot 14 for 28 from 3 because, of course they did, because they're going up against the Kings. And they won the free throw battle by a lot. 24 out of 26 for the Mavs, 11 for 15 for the Kings, 11 more free throws for the Mavericks, and well-deserved because the Kings were just the weakest of fouls in the way that they were fouls, but the Kings should not have been committing them. And they were just fouling instead of playing defense. And so now here we are, without a coach, without a front office, without your franchise player that you started the season with, and you're stuck with some bad contracts, to be honest, with a team that's going nowhere, and with an owner that continues to not make very good decisions. Because it starts at the top. Very obviously, it starts at the top. And so it'll be interesting to see how this off season plays out. Do the Kings go for a big swing, right? Do they trade for Kevin Durant or make some other pretty stupid trade to try to continue to win now? If you're trying to win now, I don't see how you're trading LaVine or Sabonis. So then it's got to be DeMar and Monk, who are getting traded to rebuild this team. But Sabonis is going to ask out. He doesn't want to be here. So then that leaves you with, in my opinion, only one option, at least only one logical option, which is to blow it up. But again, I feel like the Kings will try to do everything possible to not do that. So I really don't look forward to this offseason, but who knows? Maybe I'll be surprised. But the thing is, even if they do the right thing, even if they make the right decision, then it's like, how are we as fans supposed to believe that any success will ever come? Even if we draft the franchise savior, we've seen how a franchise can mess that up with the team we just played. I don't know if the Kings would ever be that dumb, but then again, they might be. It just sucks because it's like, what if there is a scenario where the Kings blow it up? Get some really nice young pieces, some pieces where it looks like you're building towards something, and then there's always going to be this thing in the back of our heads where it's like, how are they going to mess it up? Because it felt like something was changing 2 years ago. It felt like something had changed. It felt like we had hired a front office that knew what they were doing, and that Vivek had taken a step back, and that we had accountability from a head coach, a very respected head coach. We seemingly were drama free, had some very likable guys. And so it just showed that you can turn a situation that seems like it's really great, you can turn it on its head very quickly. And so I think as long as this ownership is in control, there's always going to be that possibility. But I will still be here cheering it on nonetheless, no matter what happens, because, that's what I was born into. I'll definitely talk a lot more about the offseason in the next couple of weeks. But for now, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. Make sure to subscribe, put on your notifications. I'll be coming out with content all off season long. It may be a little slow at first in the playoffs. We'll see. But I will see you guys later. Peace.